All right, so you want to make this whole remote work with kids thing actually work for you, huh? And you've got some really interesting source material to dig into. Excerpts from Remote Work, Real Parenthood by Maya Lopez. I'm seeing some major themes already, like time management and squeezing out a workspace, even if your place is on the smaller side. Keeping the little ones busy while you're trying to focus, and of course, the big one, taking care of your own mental health, too. So much to unpack. Let's jump right in.
Yeah, what's really fascinating is how the author approaches this. She frames it as more than just surviving. You know, it's about actually thriving as both a parent and a remote worker, not just keeping your head above water, but finding genuine joy and connection in both your work life and your role as a parent.
Right. It's such a different way of looking at things. And one thing that really stuck out to me was her point about syncing up your work hours with your kid's schedule. Can you imagine, like, actually getting through your emails during nap time? She calls those quiet periods productivity gold mines. I love that.
It makes so much sense. But it goes beyond just clever scheduling, you know? It's about recognizing the unique advantage remote work gives you as a parent. You can be present for those big moments in your child's development and strengthen that bond in a way that's just not possible with a traditional job.
Absolutely. Actually, a friend of mine who works remotely got to see their baby take their first steps because they were home. It just hits you that flexibility can really create a richer family life, which is exactly what Lopez is talking about. But let's face it, finding space for a home office can be tough,
Well,
especially if you don't have a ton of square footage.
yeah, for sure. And the book gets that. It offers some pretty creative solutions, though, like
Yeah.
using vertical space shelves,
Yeah.
maybe repurposing a closet or even just making a corner of a room feel like a dedicated work zone.
I like that. And it's not just about the physical setup, is it? The book talks about the psychological impact
Oh,
too.
totally.
Yeah.
Even a small workspace can help you make that mental shift from parent mode to professional mode.
Makes sense.
You're still in the same house, but you've got to create those boundaries. And I thought it was clever how Lopez suggests getting your kid involved in setting up your workspace.
Oh, that's interesting.
It helps them understand from the beginning that this is mommy or daddy's work time.
Yeah,
A little thing, but it can go a long way in setting those boundaries early on.
I can see that. And speaking of keeping little ones occupied, I was really impressed with the book's ideas for activities. It's not about just sticking them in front of a screen, right? She talks about sensory bins, interactive toys, things that actually stimulate their development, all while you're getting things done.
Right, it's like a double win. And what's cool is how this ties back into mental health for both you and your child. When your little one is happily engaged, you're less stressed and you can focus better, which makes you a more present parent overall. It's this positive feedback loop.
Love that. It's not just about survival, it's about setting everyone up to thrive. There's this story in the book that I keep thinking about. A parent who switches out their baby's toys regularly to keep things fresh just shows how even a small amount of intentionality can make a big difference. But let's be real for a second. We can't ignore the emotional toll that comes with trying to juggle work and parenting, especially from home.
Oh, it's definitely real. And thankfully, remote work, real parenthood, doesn't sugarcoat it.
Hmm.
It acknowledges the weight of those responsibilities and those moments where you feel totally overwhelmed, like it's all too much.
Yeah, it can be so easy to feel like you're drowning when you're in the middle of it all.
Right. But the book doesn't just leave you hanging with all that guilt and anxiety.
Mhm.
It gives you actual tools to deal with the emotional side of things. It talks about self-care routines and finding support networks, and even suggests pushing for remote work policies that prioritize mental well-being.
I like that it's not just accepting burnout as the norm, you know. It's about creating a work life that actually supports parents.
Exactly. It normalizes feeling overwhelmed and says, hey, it's okay to ask for help when you need it. This isn't just work tips. It's about building a whole lifestyle that you can sustain.
So I'm curious about those remote work policies. What kind of things does Lopez advocate for?
Well, flexibility is huge, like flexible hours, or maybe a compressed work week,
Yeah.
or even just the ability to shift your schedule around based on your kids' needs.
Mm-hmm.
That whole 9 to 5 thing doesn't exactly work when you've got toddlers and babies running around.
Yeah. Understatement of the year. Sometimes it feels like my whole life revolves around nap times and snacks.
Totally. And the book makes this great point that flexibility isn't just good for parents. It benefits companies too. When employees are less stressed and happier, they're more productive.
So it's a win-win. What other policies does she suggest?
Access to affordable childcare is a big one.
Yeah, for
The book highlights how the lack of quality childcare is a major obstacle for parents, especially those working from home. She even suggests that companies could subsidize childcare costs or partner with local providers to make it more accessible, you know?
That's pretty radical, but I can see how it would be a game changer for a lot of families.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that supporting working parents helps everybody. Lopez also talks about the need for mental health resources for remote workers, like counseling or employee assistance programs, or even just regular check-ins with managers who are trained to spot signs of burnout.
Makes sense. Working from home can get isolating sometimes, so having that support system in place could be really important.
It's not about quick fixes, you know? It's about building a work environment that truly supports its employees, especially parents.
So we've talked about company policies, but Lopez also emphasizes building a support network outside of work, right?
Oh, definitely. She talks about how important it is to connect with other parents who are also working from home. It's easy to feel alone and like you're the only one struggling when you're spending so much time at home.
I can see that. It's got to be reassuring to know you're not alone in all of this. But where do you even start to find that kind of community?
She suggests checking out online forums and social media groups. There are tons of communities specifically for work-from-home parents. You can swap tips and vent your frustrations, just feel seen and understood, you know?
That validation must make a huge difference. What about offline options?
She recommends looking into local parenting groups or co-working spaces that cater to families. Even if you can't always meet up in person, just knowing those resources exist can be a big help.
So it's about building that network both online and offline. What kind of things do people talk about in these communities?
Oh, everything. Practical tips like how to set up a home office that's both functional and kid-friendly.
Yeah.
But also the emotional side of things, like
Yeah.
dealing with mom guilt or that feeling of never being fully on or off work, all the challenges that come with this lifestyle.
Yeah, it's constant role switching. Can't be easy.
These communities create a safe space to talk about those struggles openly and honestly, without judgment.
I can see that being super valuable. Traditional workplaces aren't always the most understanding when it comes to the realities of parenting. Right, exactly. Which is why having those alternative support systems is so crucial for work from home parents. That community can make a world of difference.
Okay, so we've got community, we've got company policies, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to the individual parent, right? Their mindset, their strategies, how they choose to approach all of this.
Oh, for sure. And that's where remote work, real parenthood, really shines. One of the biggest takeaways for me was this idea of celebrating those little wins. No matter how small they seem, it's so easy to focus on what you haven't done, but if you shift your focus to those little victories, it can make a huge difference.
Right. It's about acknowledging that you managed to send those emails while your kid was happily building a tower.
Yeah.
Progress, not perfection.
Exactly. It's a mindset shift that can really reduce that feeling of overwhelm.
And I think that's something all parents need to hear, whether they work remotely or not. It's so easy to get caught up comparing ourselves to others, especially with social media and everything, and we lose sight of what we are accomplishing, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's why Lopez talks about self-compassion. You've got to be kind to yourself and recognize that you're doing the best you can in a really challenging situation.
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier with prioritizing mental health, taking care of yourself, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
It's essential. When you're feeling good, you're a better parent, a better employee, a better everything.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, we've covered a lot here. Time management, creating a workspace, building a community, taking care of your mental health. Phew.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
But that's what this deep dive is all about, right? Breaking it all down and giving you the key takeaways.
Exactly. And there's still more to come in part 3. We're going to hear some real-life stories from other work-from-home parents and see how they're actually putting all these strategies into practice.
Yeah, it's always inspiring to see how other people are making it work.
Yeah.
And it's a good reminder that you're not alone in all of this.
All right, so we've talked about all these strategies and insights from remote work, real parenthood, but sometimes it helps to actually hear how other parents are making this work, even with all the little hiccups along the way. And Lopez actually shares some really inspiring real-life stories throughout the book.
Yeah, and what I find so interesting is just how different everyone's experience is. You've got freelancers, full-time employees, single parents, couples who are tag teaming.
Yeah.
It really shows that there's no one right way to do this remote work with kids thing.
Okay, so tell me about some of these stories. Which ones really stood out to you?
Well, there's this graphic designer, Sarah. She managed to create this amazing workspace in a corner of her tiny living room. Like, she used smart storage solutions, added a few personal touches to make it feel inviting. And bam, she had this little productivity haven.
See, you don't need a whole separate office to make it work. It's about being intentional with your space, even if it's just a small area. Just to signal that, hey, this is work time.
All right, and then there's Tom, a software engineer. He's got time management down to a science. He schedules his toughest tasks during his baby's longest nap and uses timers to stay focused.
Wow, making the most of those quiet
He's
moments.
got it figured out. But like the book says, it gets easier with practice. The more you do it, the more those time management skills become second nature.
That's good to know. I know you were curious about how other parents keep their kids entertained while they're working. Did any of the stories touch on that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's Lisa, a marketing manager. She's got this whole system for rotating toys and activities to keep her baby busy throughout the day. Sensory bins, interactive games, even educational videos sometimes.
Sounds like she's created a mini learning center at home.
She has, and what Lopez emphasizes is that it's not just about keeping them occupied. It's about giving them enriching experiences that help them learn and grow.
Right, so everybody wins. What about the mental health aspect? We talked a lot about self-care, but did any of the parents share any specific strategies that work for them?
For sure. There's this project manager, David. He makes a point of taking breaks throughout the day, even if it's just for a few minutes to step outside or meditate. He says it's made a huge difference in terms of managing stress and avoiding burnout.
It's so easy to forget to take care of yourself when you're caught up in work and parenting, but those little breaks can really make a difference.
Absolutely. And then there's Maria. She actually started a virtual support group for other work-from-home parents in her area.
That's so cool. Talk about building community.
Right? They share tips and resources and just vent about the ups and downs of trying to do it all. It just shows that even though you're working remotely, you don't have to do it alone.
These stories are so inspiring. I feel like I have a much better idea of what successful remote parenthood can actually look like.
Yeah, and that's what this whole deep dive has been about, right?
Mm.
Remote work with young children is a constant balancing act. But with the right strategies, support systems, and a bit of self-compassion, it's totally possible to thrive in both roles.
So as we wrap up here, what's the one thing you want our listener to take away from all of this?
Hmm. I'd say it's this. You are capable, you are resourceful, and you're not alone. Remote work, real parenthood, is a great place to start. But ultimately, you have to trust your instincts. Find what works for you and your family, and allow yourself to embrace the beautiful messiness of it all.
I love that. This is just the beginning of your journey. And remember, you've got this. Keep learning, keep experimenting, and keep celebrating those wins, no matter how big or small.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive on